We live in unusual times at this moment where there's a lot of unusual things that are happening in the political world or, just in society in general in terms of divisiveness and things like that. I'm not going to, I'm not going to lie about it. It's upsetting to see a lot of these things. It's upsetting for a lot of us to see how, in particular, some platforms, for example, social media platforms, do increase divisiveness, right? Like that there is significant enough anecdotal evidence at this moment that we could probably say that that is going on. And it's not necessarily, and I'm not saying that, the mechanisms on the platforms are there to spur this on, and it might be the case, but it's natural human behavior to sort of look at negative things and promote negative things. That's why we see so much negativity in the news, right? Like anything that is positive is actually not going to get that much airtime. So we have to be cognizant of this. But I want to say that our world doesn't necessarily have to be ruled by this, and we can navigate some of these things in terms of having conversations that just sidestep or move beyond some of these certain negative things that are happening. And I want to talk about that. So if you don't know me, I'm Professor Dave Massac, Associate Professor of Innovation Strategy and Entrepreneurship, and I created this whole Reciprocity Project to give back as much as I possibly can. There's so many people that help me out that I want to pay the favor forward to help you out. So I think, where I see myself, and hopefully you see yourself, is that you're here to do the world some positive thing, right? Whatever that particular thing is, and however big that impact you have, that's kind of what I see myself as. Like, okay, how can I make some sort of positive impact in this world? And, one of the ways that we could do that is go head on into sort of these political discussions and go into sort of treacherous grounds, I guess, where you're not going to get that much headway in those areas because people are deeply rooted in these beliefs, and it's hard to change deeply rooted beliefs in any particular direction. It takes a long, long, long time before you start, understanding and all those kind of things. Or it may take some sort of really profound insight where all of a sudden you sort of see something, and that's hard to do. Instead, I think what we could do to make a positive difference, to sort of push things along, whatever side you're on, and whatever beliefs you have, is to sidestep some of those discussions sometimes, or most of the time, and focus on something that sort of can move us in a direction that's positive. And that's kind of why why I fell in love with business, for example, or why I fell in love with science, is that there is this sort of systematic approach where you do focus on one or two things, and you look to see how you can, push those particular things forward. In business, it's things like performance, for example, or working on the culture in your organization. In science, it's generally like, what is, how could we get more valid knowledge that has, that's impactful? What is those things that you actually look at? So, instead of worrying about the broader narrative, which it's so hard to do today, and I'm gonna say that, those people that choose to tackle those things, that's very important. Particularly, combating, negative perceptions of science and all those kind of things, right? Like that is super important. That we really need to work on as a society. That the anti-science movement is growing. It's growing for a long time. You can see undertones of that for a long time. The anti-education, anti-science movement. And those are really strong things to fight. And it's getting people to sort of think about different problems in a different way. And so, part of it is tapping into what people think about and how they sort of view it, and focus on the sort of smaller narrative of, how could we be, more positive human beings is a one way that is really, helpful for me. But another way is thinking about, okay, we do have, on the one side that is sort of raising these anti-science, these sort of discussions is, they kind of do have a point with this, right? Like, it's thinking about, not in the broader sense, but thinking about, okay, what are some of these discontents, and focusing on solving some of these things. Yes, some people actually do spend a tremendous amount on education, and it is not helpful. And I'm really open about that. My break-even point of getting a PhD is when I'm 55 years old, and that is far too far into the future. So we need to think about what are mechanisms that we can encourage and that we can sort of change in science, so that is not the case. Like, that is too far off in the future. No matter, even if you're really, if you're not sort of a rational person, I'm not getting at that. If you're not the person, so I love to focus on like personal investing and all those kind of things. So I'm very, very cognizant of it. And if you're not that kind of person, which is almost everybody, and I'm not saying I'm enlightened or anything like that, I just focus on that, right? Like, that is my viewpoint. It's an engineer and in business and stuff. But if you are not in that, it's going to seem a lot more daunting. It's going to seem a lot more scary. And we have to think about, okay, if that's the case, how do we inform people up front that this is a big thing, so that they know what's it's going to take? How do we be nice in science? How do we be civilized in science? How do we encourage people to not give up on themselves? How do we start breaking down some of the barriers? I think a really big problem that we face in science that we need to tackle is the barriers between stigma of practitioner work and looking at going into, really good organizations with doctoral degrees. I think I've never liked that perspective, and I think it's harmful to not encourage people to choose the best thing for them, and to have the sort of emotional reactions that we have in science. We always need to think about what is the best thing for those individual people. And, to be honest, if there wasn't that stigma that was there, I'd really consider going into, a really good private firm, and exercise some of that sort of decision making, right? I think that these are really important things that we need to focus on, and we really need to work on, and to encourage people to go in those different directions, to start removing some of the stigma associated with science, and these are really tough conversations, very difficult conversations, but they're focused, and they help encourage people to do good, positive things, rather than focusing on the sort of general discontents that we have, and those are real concerns. There truly are real concerns that are there, and we need to start having those conversations. What does that mean? How do we actually tackle some of these things, right? Like, in terms of why people are feeling upset, and why are they turning to alternative viewpoints and things like that, sort of suggesting that that man is out to get you and all that kind of stuff, right? And we have to think about, okay, let's take a step back. Valid concerns. What are these valid concerns that we need to address, and what do we need to do to get there? So part of the reason, another sort of big conversation that's been going on, particularly around the coronavirus, is lots of people don't understand what is going on behind it, and we need to have open conversations. But not only open conversations, I think that's a high and mighty way to say things. I think we need to have better marketing, and I think we need to really tackle some of these issues with much better marketing, I think what is happening right now is not doing a good job. And we need to address some of those things, right? Like, how do we actually get people to deeply understand this, right? So marketing might be, why don't we have a television show on Netflix and on television, on TV, that's a fun, sort of like third rock from the sun kind of show that's fun, but also really science-based. It's within it, right? And that has some really good insights where people get these kind of things, because nobody's going to sit down and watch a PBS. Like, good luck. So, that these are really important things that we need to talk about, and we need to address, and they're real concerns that we're highlighting, that what is going on is highlighting some weaknesses within the social structure that we have, and we need to address those things one step at a time. It's going to be a long, slow journey that we can address these things, right? So with that, give me a comment if you like it, and we'll see you on the next pod.